Welcome to When Not Yet Becomes Right Now, the podcast where we dive deep into the moments of transformation, the times when not yet shifts into right now and everything changes. I'm your host, Jen Ginty, and this podcast is all about those pivotal moments in our life journeys. You know the ones when the hesitation fades, when we take that first step, even if it feels like a leap. It's in these moments that growth and healing begins. Each episode will explore stories of resilience, moments of clarity, and the sparks that ignite real change. From personal experiences to expert insights, we'll uncover how people navigate the complex journey we call life and come out stronger on the other side. Whether you're searching for that spark in your own life or just curious about how change unfolds for others, you're in the right place. We'll discuss the ups and downs, the breakthroughs and setbacks, and how to embrace the right now, even when it feels out of reach. Because sometimes the hardest part of the journey is realizing that the moment you've been waiting for has already arrived. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's get started. Hello, and welcome to When Not Yet Becomes Right Now. Today we have a wonderful guest. I met this guest through New England Podcasters Group, and I'm so glad that we met and that she wanted to share her story today. So this is Christine Santos, and Christine was at her dream job for over 2 decades when she started to wonder what else is there for purpose-filled work. So she began unintentionally her entrepreneurship journey while continuing her career. Christine became an online business coach and received her life coach certification. Then, on a day she had taken off of work to spend her mother's birthday with her, she decided to just attend one conference call. But while she was on that call, her mother had 3 strokes. It was an eye opener that Christine needed to make a change. She left her successful corporate career to become her mother's caretaker. It was during this time that she took her business and skill set to the next level. She wrote a story for a group publishing book called Authentic and gained more clients while starting a podcast. Christine now has a boutique podcast production company focusing on sharing the messages of exceptional women working to serve others and improving their physical and mental health. She is also a podcast coach. Welcome, Christine.
Hello. Thank
Hi.
you so much for having me. That I love that. I hear that story read by someone. You know how that feels, and that I get chills. Thank you for doing that. I love that.
Yeah, no, you have an amazing story. You
Oh,
had a lot of life journeys and choices that you needed to make to help yourself and your loved ones.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
So why don't we get into it? I usually ask people, what's your origin story?
Yeah, sure. So I will say my origin story is started when I was 2 and my parents got divorced. And for whatever reason, my father didn't want to be a part of our lives. So we were in Wisconsin at the time, and he sent us, I'm going to use the word back, to New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I say back because that's where they were originally from, both my parents. And so at that point, my mom became a single mom to 2 children, it's myself and my brother. I call my mom and my brother my 2 heroes, and they just carried me through a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety as a child, probably due to some of the earlier trauma of being left by your father. You can imagine when you're that little, you don't really know what you don't know. And one day, so we're already back in New Bedford. And one day my father comes to visit us. So again, just realize I'm probably 4 or 5 at this point. So you don't really know. You're just a child. But I hear, my mother must have told me, I don't remember specific details, but I hear he's coming. So I think, oh my gosh, it's finally here. We're being reunited as a family. This is going to be the best day ever. And he comes. I don't remember all the details of why he was there or what happened, but I remember as he was leaving, it was clear to me as that little child that he was leaving. It wasn't the fairy tale ending that I wanted. And I got frantic, frantic. Like, how is this happening? This was going to be the best day ever. So I grab onto his leg and I'm screaming and don't go, don't go. And as I remember it, he just pushed me off his leg and left. And at that point, I'm left in the arms of course, my beautiful mother and my brother, who my brother's a couple of years older. So, he's only a child as well. Um, and that was really the origin of these two heroes in my life and such important people throughout my life. So many stories that we all have, but just how they've lifted me up, supported me. I definitely had some of your typical, nothing extraordinary, but typical teenage troubled years. And they were always there to support me. I remember one time I was in college and I met with my mother. I said, Mom, let's go have lunch. And I'm going to tell her that I'm leaving college. And so I get with my mother and I said, well, I'm going to drop out of college. And my mother, in her very stern way, said, no, you're not.
I get
And
that.
I continued on, and I'm really thankful for that. And I'm not one to say that everybody has to go to college. That's a different story, and I don't necessarily believe that. But for me, I was really thankful for her approach and staying in school. So much so, my mother was really known amongst my friends as an overprotective and strict mother, and I was always grounded. My friends and I would go do something, and my mother would find out or whatever it was, and she'd ground me, but my friends weren't grounded. And then their parents would call and say, "You're too strict. Christine shouldn't be grounded." But as an adult, and I didn't know it at the time for sure, right? I'm thinking she's too strict, right? But they had different life circumstances, and I really credit my mom for probably too much. She probably was a little bit too much, but there had to be these really strong boundaries. My mother worked all the time. She worked 3 jobs. It was my brother and I alone in not good conditions and not good neighborhoods. I could have really gotten into trouble. So maybe she was too strict, but I still credit her for putting those really strict guidelines in and me getting to where I am today. So that leads us to that story that you told at the beginning. My mom has lived with us. I'm married now, I have a child, and she's helped take care of my child when I was in corporate. And she's just a wonderful person in my life. And I, like you said, decided to take a call one day on her birthday, which I spend with her every year since I've been an adult, right? Yeah. Not when I was younger, for sure. Don't get me wrong. I'm not the perfect child by any means. And yeah, she had 3 strokes. And I'm like, what am I doing? I keep thinking to myself, I'm going to spend more time with this woman who gave up so much for us, has had her own, not my story to tell, her own trauma stories. And what am I waiting for? So that was my right now. It's time.
Little one learning to navigate their big emotions? Meet My Moody Monster, the pull apart buddy to help kids understand and manage their feelings. With its fun, interactive design, Moody turns tough feelings into teachable moments, giving your child a playful way to express themselves. Whether it's after a rough day or when those big frustrations hit, Moody is there to lend a hand. Perfect for calming down or even just a cuddle. My Moody Monster helps your child communicate their emotions while learning healthy coping skills. Go to mymoodymonster.com to learn about Moody today. Yeah, it makes sense, and I had the same kind of boundaries that my mother put up for me. It wasn't so much strict on my overall life, but when I went to college, she told me you have to be in therapy. I
Mm,
and she was pretty harsh with it. She was like, I won't help you unless you're in therapy throughout your
mm,
your 4 years. And I was mad, but as I started doing that, I was in Boston and, going every week to my therapist, I started to understand the necessary part of that. I was still actually at that point still in a court case against my abuser. So I think she had the wherewithal to say, no, you really need to be in therapy for this. Uh,
mhm.
and you'll understand later in life why. So I
Yeah,
get that.
yeah, truly. So I'm so sorry to your story as well. It's so, our stories really impact us. And it's personally, I think it's what we do with them at the right time, because there's not, I don't think that there's like one like thing that we do and then we're healed or then we're all better and then okay, well that's good. Here we it's like it's evolving all the time, right? And we have to make decisions along the way. And I'm so glad that you made that decision. Your mom encouraged you, and I'm so glad I made the decision to listen to my mom. Like you think about that. Think about that. Like I don't know how strongly you adhered to your mom's guidance, but as an adult, you kind of look back and it's like, why didn't I just sneak out of the house? Or why didn't, whatever it was, right?
Yep.
Quit therapy or, whatever, or quit school. She said I couldn't. I could have quit school. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting to kind of look back at it from that perspective. And all that it wasn't like I didn't quit school and then I become a straight A student. I certainly didn't. I
Hmm.
certainly didn't, right? But it's like that one decision and keep going and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had this really great career that you loved being in. And
Right.
tell me about that moment where you said, what else can I do out there?
I know, right? So I had this phenomenal career. So when I graduated from college, I'm fishing my brain. When I graduated from college, I always wanted to drive cross country. I was that person who's like, I'm going to pack up my car and go to California. I've always wanted to be an actress. I'm going to, go to Hollywood and become a star, whatever I thought, but California was the place for me. And I got a job right out of college in corporate. And I worked there for a couple of years, still, in my 20s, still, I was very social. I went out a lot. I did all the things that typically 20-year-olds do. I didn't really have a boyfriend. I was always out at the clubs, that type of thing. That was
Right.
me. And I'm like, I'm going to California. I'm going to quit my job and pack up and go to California. So I did. I certainly did. And I lived there for maybe 9 months. An ex-boyfriend from college came out to visit me, which made me homesick. And he went back home. I ended up coming back home, leaving California, and he ended up going back to Arizona.
Oh, no.
So I'm like, oh, there's that. But anyways, all to say, when I came back, I had all these friends that were at this company. And I'm like, this is the company I want to work at. It's fantastic. You can travel. It sounded it was a young company. A lot of young people work there. It sounded like I could still maintain that social aspect of my life that I wanted. Right. And I did all my research. I'm sort of that person as well, where I went at the time, I'm in my 50s now, 55. So at the time, to research a company, you had to go to the library. So I went to the
I remember.
library. Remember? It wasn't as easy as it is now. Went to the library, researched, and I remember my interview and the woman who interviewed me, and she said, how do we know that you're not going to up and leave? Here on your resume, you were at this company for a couple of years and you're like, I'm going to California. You don't show any stability, which that is so different than it is today, but that's what they were looking for. And I said, I said all the right things, whatever I said, relayed the information that I had studied about the company. And so ultimately I got hired and I was ecstatic. And I just blossomed and I really enjoyed my social and sort of going out, morphed into being sort of a community leader, which then morphed into being a leader in corporate because I enjoyed being with people. I enjoyed getting people together. I enjoyed motivating people. It's all kind of the same thing if you think about it. And I just really loved people. And so I started climbing the corporate ladder and I was there for 27 years. And when I turned maybe 48, I think it just was like, I'm going to be 50 soon. And really, is this all there is? And in my mind, and this is so naive, I know that now, I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know anything besides corporate. I started looking into, I don't even know how I stumbled upon it. I stumbled upon Seth Godin. I really loved Seth Godin. I started taking some classes with Seth Godin, one being podcasting. Didn't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm going to start a podcast. So I started a podcast right away. Didn't know what I was doing, but just did it. Then I found Marie Forleo, and it just kept one thing after the other. And I said to my husband, there's a whole other world out there. Do you know there are people that don't drive to work an hour and drive back home an hour and work 9 to 5? Like, there's something else going on. And it just was so motivating to me. And I started getting into personal development and meeting all these amazing people like myself, people that were in entrepreneurship for years that I was learning from. And so I just toiled away. And people always said to me, you should be a life coach. Again, kind of going back to that skill set and love for people. And so I got certified. And then I was in all these groups and masterminds. I started getting clients. And I had this one amazing client. She's still amazing. We're friends to this day. And she had a podcast and she needed help producing it. And I said, all right, well, I have a podcast. I know the basics, help you out. Sure, why not? And I was coaching her in her business and as a life coach, business coach perspective. I said, sure, why not? So I started doing it, loved it, and it just kept snowballing, kept snowballing. And then I just really, really just embraced it. And then I said, you know what? I'm not going to be a life coach. I'm going to be a podcast producer. And that's where I am today.
That's great. Do you still do your podcast?
I still have my own podcast. Yeah. And I produce other people's podcasts.
What's your favorite part about producing other people's podcasts?
Learning. Oh my God, such an easy answer. That is absolutely why I love it. So I'm very specific about who I partner with because I do think of my clients as partners because I'm very passionate about serving people. So in whatever capacity, I think we can all serve people. I'm going to back step a little bit and talk about my corporate career where one of my main functions besides managing teams was hiring. So I'd interview candidates all the time. And I firmly believe that, yes, here's somebody that's walked in our front door, might be right out of college, might be in their 40s and doing a career transition. And they have something that we can learn from them. Sure, we've been in business for like 50 years, not 50 years at that time, but 30 years at that time, maybe. And to me, we're on an equal playing level. Like you're right out of college, you're bringing something. You're 40 and you've had another career, you're bringing something to the table. We can all learn from each other. So I really embrace that. And for me, something that I have always really been interested in is health and wellness, physical and mental health. And mental health has always been a very big component of my life, younger life. I've been in therapy for years, um, adult life. And so all this whole component, I really believe in mind, body, spirit, and working with these clients, I learned so much. These experts. So I'm not an expert, just to let me be clear about that. In that space, I just really enjoy it and I really learn so much and I enjoy learning. So when I partner with somebody, I partner with people who are serving others. And don't get me wrong, they don't have to be doing some astronomical thing. They could be serving themselves. I always say, you first, like first and foremost, take care of ourselves, right? Because then we can't be good for anybody if we're not good, right? So, so I don't, when I say serving, you don't have to be doing some grandiose work, but I do believe we all can serve each other. So I work with clients who are in that space and I just learn so much. I remember I had a few clients that weren't in that space and they're great and I still have them. Um, but my first client that was in the wellness space and I thought, yeah, at this point in my life, I'm 80% educated. I'm an expert, educated in health and wellness. After working with her, I'm like, oh, I'm like 20% educated.
Yeah, you think you got, a lot more in your brain, but there's so much more out there.
Exactly. So that's my favorite thing about it. Working with people who are doing great work, helping others, helping themselves, and the learning aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Was it was it scary to step out of that corporate world?
So that's a great question. It wasn't scary. I'm going to say it really wasn't scary. So I started my entrepreneurship journey when I was 48. And I'm 55 now. I've been out for 3 years. So you do the math.
Mhm.
But and I wasn't certainly, please, anybody listening, I am not in any financial situation where I'm making what I made in corporate. I'm just totally honest about that. Like, I definitely left that behind. And so that kind of goes to that question, was it scary? And I think that the epitome of your podcast, not yet. And then that happens with my mother. And I'm like, this is the time. So I didn't feel scared. It was more like, this is a huge sign because there had been other signs with her health, okay, along the way. When that happened, I really thought I was going to lose her that day. I mean, it was significant. And we called my brother on that day. I'll just pause for a moment to tell this story. On that day when she had her strokes, I didn't really know what was happening at the time, but I knew something bad was happening. I said, let's call Joe. She was just not with it. But I said, let's call Joe, my brother, because he lives out of state. And I said to my brother, this might be the last time you talk to her. So let's do this. And I didn't say that to her. I said, oh, it's your birthday. She, at this point, she had had the stroke. She's laying in her bed. The ambulance, the EMTs were at the house, but I wanted her to talk to my brother before they took her out of the house. And so they were there while this was happening. And I just said to her, Mom, it's your birthday. Let's call Joe, you know. And so I didn't say to her, this might be the last time we talk to him, but I said that to him. And so it was so significant to answer your question. It wasn't a question. There was no doubt. And again, because I had worked for that company for so long and I had was in good standing, they were so good to me. And they're like, anytime you want to come back, reach out. So it was kind of like I had that security blanket too in my head. I knew that that wasn't going to happen, but I wasn't scared. I knew that was a sign. I believe in that. And it was a sign this is the time. I'm not going to get this time back. My mother has had such a traumatic life herself, and she's taken such good care of us. It was my time. I've never looked back or regretted it.
Great. As I hear other people's stories, it's so fascinating to me where that right now part of the whole thing really doesn't become scary when you know it's the
Mm,
right time. When something tells you, just like you were given this sign. And so you knew at that point what you had to do.
mhm,
That
mhm.
right now moment was significant and, not fearful.
Yeah. Was your right now moment fearful?
Well, my right now moment was interesting in the fact that my brain pretty much just said to me, you got to do this right now. You have to stop running by, like brain fog and exhaustion. And
Mm,
I had just lost my boutique and had to go into bankruptcy. So I felt I lost a big part of myself.
mm.
And I hadn't been taking care of me because all I really wanted to do was take care of all of my loved ones around me. That was my role since childhood, caretaker. So I knew in that moment that I had to stop everything. I mean, be a mom, be the mother that I am, but also take time to take care of myself.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did. I love your story. It's such a beautiful story.
And yours is as well.
Yeah.
It's that you always appreciated everything your mom did for you and that she's one of your heroes is just such a beautiful, uplifting thing. And now you're with her and you have this extraordinary business. You're helping other women as you're doing what you feel is right in your moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. It's nice to hear that back. I had a really beautiful morning this morning with my mom. I'm interviewing her I'm doing local access TV where we met, right?
Yes.
And I am doing this sort of, I'm going to call it a series of interviewing amazing women. And I'm kicking it off with my mom. We spent 2 hours today in the car because it's not near my house, and just listening to her. She's at that stage in her life. She's 85, where she's thinking about the past a lot, repeat stories, and it's totally fine. I don't mind, and she's telling me these stories today, like old boyfriends, just like random things. And how beautiful is it
It's
that
a,
we
it's
can
a,
have this time together?
it's a gift.
It's a gift. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I'm so glad that you decided to put it into a space and be able to put it out there for others to see the beauty of her memories, but also the connection you have with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful. Mhm.
So tell us where we can find you.
So you can find me. I have a website. It's wonderboldly.com. I have a podcast, Wonder Boldly. So either of those places, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram actually is my name, which is Christine B. Santos. You can follow me there. And you'll find that I'm really all about podcasting. I talk so much about it. I just think it's a great medium to, like I already said, learn from others, hear different points of views. I just love it so much. And those are the places. Instagram's really where I live. So that's where you'll see me talk about podcasting and my mother and whatever else is happening.
If a podcaster wanted to get in touch with you to, work with you, what would they need to do?
Yeah, so you can go to my website and there's a link there that you can to work with me is right there, and you can click on that link and it'll give me an email, and or you can DM me on Instagram. Um, I know I live on Instagram. I'm there a lot.
How about your book? Where can we find
Thank
yeah.
you. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking. I didn't even think of that because the book is authentic. It was, like you already said, a co-authored book, and they can find it on Amazon. And what I love about it is all these amazing stories. So each chapter is somebody's story, amazing stories, men and women. And the proceeds go to Elamu Girl. And it is this nonprofit that a friend of mine that I met when I was in my personal development in a mastermind started this nonprofit where she's working with young girls in Africa, teaching them, not her, but she started this organization, teaching them to sew, have a choice, have a voice, have a bank account. So they go to this school and they learn to sew. And when they go back to their village, they can make money sewing. And a lot of these girls come from families where they're married off, like when they're 12. And so the proceeds for that book go to Elamu Girls, and you can find that as well on Instagram, Elamu Girls, and their website, Elamu Girls. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking about that.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to put those all in the show notes for everyone. And I highly recommend to podcasters to go talk with Christine because she has a wealth of information and she's a fantastic person to work with.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here on the
Thank you.
show. And I loved this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so, so much. This was such an honor.
Thanks. I find Christine's journey so beautiful because it bloomed from this love for her mother who took care of her for such a long time as a single mother. And now she realized it's time to return that favor and to take care of her mother. And I love her entrepreneurial journey, how it morphed from corporate to mentor to podcast producer. It's interesting because I feel like I also went on a journey kind of like that myself. I went from corporate to I became a wardrobe stylist and I bought a boutique. And then when that didn't work out, I decided to create a monster doll to help kids better cope with their frustrations. I mean, from corporate to stylist to plush maker, I guess. So our journeys are unique, but they also sort of follow a line too. Thank you so much for listening, and there'll be a lot of resources in the show notes from Christine.